Hello, I'm Nicole and I crochet amigurumi, or I try to crochet. It just kind of all depends on the cat, who, by the way, is currently sitting right down here. You can't see her because she's right out of sight, but if you see a tail flicking, that's probably what that is. So this video is for beginner crocheters or people who have just started using bulkier yarns. Maybe they have crocheted their entire lives, but they've just never ventured into those bulkier yarns and they have no idea what to choose. Because it's a daunting task. There are so many yarns. And I mean, obviously most of them are the acrylic and lighter weight yarns, but there are still quite a few bulkier yarns and they are expensive. And you do not want to buy something that doesn't work for you, waste all that money, and then discover later on that, you can't use it. So hopefully this review helps. I do want to include the disclaimer though that these are my own opinions. If you have used any of the yarns and you disagree with my opinion, that's totally fine. Everyone has their own opinion. And yes, that's the cat getting up. Just keep that in mind and nobody get angry at me, please, if they're like, oh, actually, I love this yarn, or actually, I hate this yarn. Everybody has different opinions. What works for one person might not work for another. So let's get into this. So first I want to talk about the Snuggles yarns, starting with Sweet Snuggles. And I realize that this isn't terribly helpful to anybody who might be international, who might not have a Snuggles, but they are, of course, very popular here in the US, so I did want to include them. So whenever you hear discussion about bulkier yarns, and Maya has joined us, you hear about Sweet Snuggles. I'm going to try to hold it over her so that you guys can see it. You hear about it for good reason. It's a very good bulkier yarn. This one is their jumbo number 7. However, it also comes in a lighter one, super bulky number 6. So, which for whatever type you need, they do have it. The texture is great. It is super soft. It does shed like all of these yarns do, but it doesn't shed as bad as some of the other ones. The biggest issue I have with this yarn is that I can never find the colors I want at Snuggles. They always seem to be sold out. Sorry guys, trying to film when she's shaking the entire tripod right now. So that's a big problem with this, especially if you're working on a project that requires multiple skeins of the same color. Make sure to stock up in advance whenever they do have it, because if you go back, they might not have that anymore. If you are working on a bigger project, I think she saw a bird, that might require more than one skein of a particular color, it is best to stock up while you can. So for example, there was this pretty pink color at Michael's that I only got one skein of, and I have not been able to find that same color at Michael's since. And I always check online, but like ordering online is ridiculously expensive with shipping, and most of the time it's sold out online as well anyway. So just something to keep in mind. It's a great yarn, super easy to work with, but finding a particular color in it is difficult. So next we have the other big Snuggles brand, which is Chenille Home. As you can see, it's another vibrant color, and if you put the two up next to each other, they look very similar in style. This one is also the number 7 jumbo, so of course it's bigger, but it does come in a slim version as well, so if you needed that. This one is usually much more available at Michael's, and the reason I think for that is it's kind of a pain to work with, is what I found. It is usable and it feels just as nice as Sweet Snuggles does, but it comes apart super easily, so that is something to keep in mind. Whenever I try to make a magic ring with this stuff, it takes me several tries before I can get it to go without fraying terribly or just snapping entirely. So it's just a little bit more, I think, difficult to work with. Again, it's a very nice, pretty texture, and it comes in more, I don't think it comes necessarily in more colors, but it's available usually at Michael's in more colors. So that's definitely helpful. As you can tell, if I had to choose one, I'd go Sweet Snuggles any day. But I do obviously get the Chenille Home when I find colors like this, because this is such a pretty color that is not available in the Sweet Snuggles, or just isn't available in the Sweet Snuggles at my store at that time. Next, we have the Bernat blanket yarn. Now, this one is particularly baby blanket, which is, of course, the super bulky versus the jumbo stuff. But it does come in regular blanket yarn as well. If you have seen online, I feel like it's super controversial and for good reason. So the texture of this, it's kind of weird. I don't really know how to explain it. And maybe if you can see how it looks a little bit more raggedy than the Sweet Snuggles and the Chenille Home did. She is back, everybody. However, I do find that this doesn't shed as much as Sweet Snuggles and Chenille Home. So while the texture isn't my favorite, it can be more usable just because it's not shedding everywhere and you're not losing little fluff pieces all the time. This is sold at pretty much all the craft stores, so Michael's, Joann's, probably Hobby Lobby, I haven't actually checked, Walmart, Amazon, you can get it a whole bunch of places. It is a little bit pricier. Sweet Snuggles is probably $9 or $10, and this one usually is about 12, depending on where you're getting it. So, more expensive. Some people love this stuff, some people hate it. It's not my favorite, but it isn't bad because while texture-wise I'm not terribly fond, it doesn't shed nearly as much as Sweet Snuggles or Chenille Home or most of the other ones on this list. So that is definitely a positive in my mind. But again, it's also more expensive. So pros and cons. Continuing with the Bernat ones, we have Bernat Baby Velvet, which please excuse the mess that is this skein, and that's getting my cat's attention. That's one of the big issues I actually have with this particular one, is that it just kind of comes unraveled and it gets into a knotted up mess, and it's really hard to get it back to a somewhat decent thing. I got this one because somebody suggested using the velvet yarns, and so I tried it out. I'm not a fan. I love the end results. It feels so super soft and velvety, but it is a pain to work with. So, the stitches are super hard to see. So if you're a beginner especially, I would not recommend this. Yes, it is soft, and yes, it comes out to a super nice velvety texture, but it takes double the amount of time to work on one project just because you cannot see your stitches as you work. Eventually, of course, you do get used to it, and it becomes much easier to be able to, just know instinctively where to put your hook. But when you first start using it, it's just a pain. So just something to keep in mind. This is the baby velvet. So again, it's the thinner version. It is, as you can see, super thin. It's like, I think 4, is the weight. 4 or 5. I'm not 100% certain on that. So it makes your projects obviously a lot smaller than what you would expect. It does also come in regular velvet as well. I do like that they come in a lot of pastel-y colors, but again, there's just a bit of a learning curve when using it, and it's just a mess. So not my favorite. I have made several great projects with it. I will insert a couple pictures here of those projects that I have made with it so you can see kind of what the end result is. Next, we have our Hobbii or Hobbii yarns. So that is that online website that a lot of people who in the crochet community use and talk about. I have ordered both Honey Bunny and Baby Snuggle. They're very, very similar. They're both about the exact same weight, super bulky. I will say the Baby Snuggle is just a tiny bit softer, I would say, than the Honey Bunny, but not by much. I have not actually used the Baby Snuggle on a project yet. I haven't gotten to it yet. I imagine it's going to work up very similarly to the Honey Bunny though, which great yarn. I haven't had any problems with it. It is, as you can see, a bit of a smaller skein, so that is something to keep in mind when you're getting it. You might need more to finish a particular project. It sheds, as all of these polyester yarns do, but it doesn't shed too much. I haven't had any consistent problems with it. The one thing to keep in mind with this though is it is an online store, so there is of course shipping costs unless you reach the minimum amount that you need to have free shipping, but that is a lot of yarn. I think the shipping fee for the most part is only $10, the flat rate shipping, so that's not terrible if you're not getting enough to get the free shipping. So pros and cons. It also, I think, is shipping from Denmark, so there will be time for it to get there. So if you need it immediately, it is not the best option. But the customer service is amazing, so that is definitely a big benefit of these. You also get a candy in your package. And I love candy, so no complaints from me on that. So overall, good yarn. I just ordered some more, so hopefully I can test out some more colors as well. Another good thing about these is that they come in so many different colors. So that is definitely a big benefit of buying from this website, just because you have a lot more color options than what you would have in a Michaels or Joann's store. Next, we have another one from online that is talked about a lot, Premier Parfait Chunky. So this is quite popular. I have heard a lot of talk about the Parfait Chunky. It also comes in Parfait Extra Large as well, so if you need the bigger one. Now, feeling this compared to the Hobbii yarn that I just put away, this does feel a little bit softer and silkier. However, I do find it a little bit more difficult to work with. I have used a kiwi green color from Premier Parfait Chunky quite often on a few different projects, and it just shreds to pieces when working with it. So it is usable, but that is something to keep in mind, that it is one that will fall apart a little bit more. Now, you will find little techniques about like burning your ends or tying your ends together to help prevent some of that shedding, and I'm kind of scared to burn the ends, but I have tried tying the ends, and that does seem to help a little bit, but it never helps long term, so just something to keep in mind. Now, since this is an online retailer as well, this comes in a ton of different colors. So again, that is definitely a big benefit of the Premier Parfait line. Again, tinier skein, so just keep in mind that you might have to get a lot for whatever project you're working on. And the last one I want to talk about is kind of a bonus round because I've never actually heard this one discussed before. It's called Himalaya Dolphin Baby. If you watched my last video, you saw that this was the yarn that was recommended for the pattern I was working on, which is why I purchased it. I actually really like it. It's super soft, and as you can tell, this is a very vibrant hot pink, which I really, really like. It does shed, as I said, all of these do, but it doesn't shed terribly, so it's not awful. It also does seem to come in a lot of different colors, so there is that too. I do think it's a slightly lighter weight than your typical Sweet Snuggles or any of those. So just something to keep in mind, that your projects might come out slightly smaller just because it is just a bit lighter weight. Even though it is still marked as the super bulky, it's a bit thinner. But overall, I really like it. I actually bought this one on Amazon because, as I said, they just suggested this particular yarn, and that was where I found it, was Amazon. It does look like it was made in Turkey originally, so if there's anybody watching this from Turkey, well, maybe you know this brand. I had never heard of it before I started working on this project. But like I said, it worked really well. Super bright pink, really like it. So if you're looking for something that might not be your typical Sweet Snuggles or Chenille Home or Hobbii or all those other classic ones, look up Himalaya Dolphin Baby on Amazon. It's a little bit pricier, and they do come in these tiny, tiny little skeins, but yeah, it's pretty good, I think. So I definitely would recommend this one as well. And again, sorry for the cat. She is right there, front and center on the tripod currently. So that was my yarn review. As you can see, Miss Maya has come up again and wants more attention. I hope that what I said helps you out. Like I said, not everybody is going to have the same opinions on these yarns as I did, but these are my own personal opinions and the experiences that I have had. I know that there are a ton more out there that I just haven't gotten to yet. Honestly, I am swimming in yarn from my addiction already, so maybe it'll be a little while till I try out some other ones. But hopefully for the ones that I have tried, this little review helps you a little bit if you're maybe in between which one to buy. Maybe you're thinking of getting one on Hobbii, but you also heard about Premier Parfait and you're just not sure. So hopefully this will just give you a better idea of some of the pros and cons of some of these yarns before you put out $10, $15 on a skein of yarn. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope this video at least helps someone. If you liked this video, please don't forget to like, subscribe, all that fun stuff. And I hope to see you guys in the next video. Thank you. Bye.